Everyone, and welcome to the College Chats podcast. On this episode, we're going to talk with our guest about all that's been happening across college football this last weekend, but with one eye on the ACC. But first, we're the chaps, and I'm joined by Oliver. And as we're recording this on a Monday night, I'm pretty sure you've not slept yet, sir. Is that right? How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. Yeah. It's been, I don't know, I can't even remember the last time I had sleep involved. But there's football tomorrow night. We are recording this Monday. There's weekday Conference USA starts tomorrow. 5 straight days of college football. So that'll be a test. I might not be alive next week.
We talked about before we press record. We talked about change. We didn't talk about that level of change. So let's move on. Our guest is a repeat offender on this show and joins us from his show The Huddle and many other appearances across the ESPN network. Currently, you can see him on a Saturday morning sitting next to Jimbo Fisher, which means we might have to talk a little bit louder and definitely a bit slower to him during the next 30 minutes. So it's awesome to welcome back Eric McLean. Hi, Eric. How are you?
What's up, brothers? Great to see y'all. I was very ecstatic and a little bit hesitant because Ollie apparently has some type of scam account. He's getting kicked off of X. I don't know what the deal is. And so I read it. I was like, is this really my guy? I don't know. How do I know the truth? But always a pleasure and always grateful for the invitation.
Well, we love having you on, and there's a lot happened to Ollie in the last 12 months that you probably don't want to know about. Um, I Before we pressed the button, we talked a lot about how much change and how chaotic this season has been. And just at the point that we thought we'd seen everything, Penn State said, "Hold my beer," because James Franklin, who's been head coach in Happy Valley for 12 seasons, is no longer there. So before we get on to the obvious question about who's going to replace him, Eric, what do you think about the timing of this? Clearly, Penn State have been on a really bad run of results,
Mhm.
but only a matter of weeks ago they were ranked the number three team in the in football. So the fall from grace has been high and it's been quick. What do you think about the timing of this?
Yeah, I do think it's fascinating. Like mid-season fires to me are always just something that is, really, really interesting and something you have to take into account and something you look at. And, typically when people make a fire of this magnitude, they already have the guy, right? Like they've had conversations, they feel good about it, they're going to get them. But when it's mid-season like this, it's very strange. And it's something that you just don't typically understand or get, especially in this particular situation. I know, listen, there's the stigma of he can't win the big game and he can't do this, can't do that, but he's won a lot. And he just won 2 college football playoff games a year ago. He was literally a play away from being in a national championship. And so for me, man, it's bizarre to say the least. When you add up all the money that's involved in the college football world right now with paying players and revenue share and still wanting to do facilities and all these different things to just ante up $50 million, whatever it's going to be, for someone not to be in the building. It's just a crazy decision. And so I don't know. I don't love it, obviously. And I don't know. It wasn't even really given a chance to shake up the staff or say this is your last straw. Just kind of was, here you go. See you later. And I get it. A lot of, and part of it's the media's fault too, right? Because we're sitting here saying this is the most loaded roster they've ever had. This is the time. This is blah, blah, blah. And so all those boosters and administrators are probably listening and reading that. And they're like, well, what the hell is going on? We just lost. Get this guy out of here. It's his fault. I think you need to have a little bit more understanding of the situation at hand there. So I don't know, man. There's so many different things that are or have been mentioned as reasons to why. I don't know if it'll ever necessarily make sense the way that you do it.
Yeah, it seems wild. Ollie and I were just chatting about this 10 minutes ago. That and you're right. There's so many different kind of theories as to why they're going to let him go, and part of the problem might be they thought it was time for a change, and they wanted to avoid the Billy Napier situation, which is he then wins his next 3 games, and then they've got a bit of a situation on their hands. But it doesn't, particularly the quarterback's going to be out for the season. I think Penn State fans probably at this point say, well, that's it, the season's done. So where is the harm in moving out to the end of the season and then making the change there? But it certainly does feel that, to your point, the fans' opinion started to, well, has been turning, but certainly turned on Saturday, and there was a lot of discontent from the stands, and it feels as if the administration's moved quite quickly. The obvious question, Eric, is who's going to replace him? It was interesting to listen to Matt Rule earlier. As much as he said he was really happy in Nebraska, he also used the words alma mater about 17 times during that discussion. Is there an obvious candidate to replace him?
I think that's it. I think that Cignetti is certainly one of them. You know, two guys within the conference right there, one that has clear connections and things of that nature. I think Manny Diaz at Duke is another one that people are maybe sleeping on a little bit. The job that he did and clearly what he's done at Duke, you would expect that with more resources, with, you know, a better team, quote unquote, what could he do there? You know, obviously learning from his time as a head coach in Miami, the chaos of that situation and how it ended, to kind of be reborn and created as a head coach. So I think any three of those are probably the headliners. Now, people also have these imaginary lists that make no sense. I mean, I saw Dabo Swinney's name on something. I saw Mike Elko name, Lane Kipp, like those guys. You know, Dabo clearly not, but Elko's not leaving A&M to go to Penn State. I mean, what are we talking about? Lane Kiffin is not, you know, leaving the SEC to go to the Big Ten at that school, right? Like those things to me are just ridiculous in regards to who people want to throw out there. But, you know, I think that particularly the two that are already in the Big Ten make a lot of sense and something that's going to be really interesting to kind of follow along with.
You mentioned Dabo, Eric, and it would be very, very rude of us if we didn't quite quickly into this podcast turn our attention to the Clemson Tigers. We go from a team that have lost 3 in a row to a team that have lost 3 against expectation this year. Obviously not where anyone thought they would be. You mentioned there about Penn State having a stacked roster. I think everyone felt the same about Clemson this year. Yeah. Talk to me about what's gone on this year for your Tigers.
Really weird start, obviously, you know, with them just looking like a team, Ollie, that instead of having the number one production returning, looked like a team full of people that have never played with each other. I mean, it was bizarre in regards of seeing people on different pages, seeing guys not seemingly know each other on the field with dropping passes, not hitting wide open passes, not picking up the blocks that, you know, they should, not stopping, you know, routine things on defense. And you kind of take a step back and you're just like, what is going on? How and why is this happening? And I still don't have that question, but, you know, the interesting thing, or that answer, the interesting thing was, okay, what are they going to look like after the bye week that came at seemingly the perfect time where you get embarrassed by Syracuse at home, a Syracuse team that I know post Steve Angeli getting hurt, but has looked horrific, right? Like they look terrible right now, and Clemson made them look like national champs. And so, you know, how would the Tigers respond? I will say, Ollie, and I know y'all know this, that they have played the 2 worst teams in the ACC in back-to-back weeks, and it looks like it should. You know, 20, 30-point victories. That's what it should be against those teams. So now that makes you think, okay, have they made strides? As Cade figured something out, because he has been super efficient in getting the football to his receivers. They looked fantastic running the ball finally against Boston College, and the defense picked up. That was the defense's best game by far, again, against a very much struggling team in Boston College. And so, you know, to me, man, there's still maybe some goals out in front of you. You know, obviously you want to finish strong and continue to cement your legacy as a Clemson player for your university. But yeah, it's certainly unfortunate and quite frustrating to see kind of where they are and how they kind of let this one get away.
You're obviously still quite close to the program and everyone that's there right now. What's the feeling from within? Because it's all right us sitting here, especially us, thousands of miles away, but it's all right if people casting aspersions on what is happening at Clemson from outside of that program. What's the feeling like inside there?
Yeah, I think they're right now, you know, on a 2-game win streak. I think there's some excitement. There's some, okay, it's us against the world type of vibe. But, you know, early in the season, I think there was confusion, just like there is for me. It's kind of a bunch of people looking around saying, how is this happening? Why is this happening? Particularly, their head coach and Dabo Swinney. So, it'll be interesting to see what comes from this season. If Clemson goes on and wins every game here out, there probably won't be many changes at all. But if they don't, and they do, lose some more football games, what does that look like? Are there staff changes? Are there personnel ideology changes where you look at things differently? You want to use and try to use the transfer portal at a higher clip. I'm not sure. It will be interesting just to see what comes from a season that had so much expectation from everybody. And don't let anyone say that there wasn't, because every single person in that building, outside of that building, had national championship expectations for this team. And clearly they're going to fall well short of that.
You mentioned the head coach. You know the head coach better than most, Eric. What's he like in that type of situation? I mean, and I'm not just talking about a season where they haven't lived up to expectations. The start of that season was almost kind of Penn State-ish, kind of falling off a cliff. What is Dabo like in that type of situation?
Yeah, well, one thing true is like, his faith, his belief, all these things are going to keep him afloat and keep him strong, right? Like that, there's no doubt or question about that. But I think there is, a little bit of, being flustered. There is a little bit of frustration. There is a little bit of how and why is this happening that kind of creeps in everybody. And they're searching for anything, right? Any type of, answer. Do I have to wear the same underwear? Do I need to wear the same socks? Are we going to wear different jerseys? What are we going to do to get us out of this funk? Because we'll do whatever it takes. And you heard him saying it's been an utter coaching failure to this point a couple of weeks ago. So clearly, he is shouldering a lot of that blame, as he should, being the head coach. That's just a part of it. But again, there's never a guy in college football that has more belief in his program, what he's built, and his players and staff that he has. And so he's always going to lean on that family, that closeness, and that togetherness that Clemson has been able to develop and stand strong on, for the last 2 decades.
I understand a black hoodie is quite helpful in winning games these days. So
maybe that's what I need to buy him. I need to go get him a black hoodie and ship it to him and say, try this, see if this works.
You have to get the black hoodie of death. It's a particular brand, I believe. Let's go to the other end. Well, that's been disingenuous. I was going to say the other end of the table. Let's go to the top of the table. And there's a lot of focus on Miami, but it feels to me that Georgia Tech is a team that continues just to motor along. And Ollie and I saw Georgia Tech in Dublin last season, and they looked like a very hard team to beat. They still look like a very hard team to beat. Can you convince me otherwise that they're not the hardest team to beat in the ACC just now?
Hardest team to beat is fascinating, because obviously we've seen what they've done to Miami, the last couple of times they've played each other, right? And it's kind of one of those where you got to show me otherwise. But Miami is very talented. I know we'll talk about them here in a second. Now, they are maybe the toughest team in just regards to mindset, how they go about their business. They have fully embraced and adopted, that mindset from their head coach, who is a former offensive lineman for the same university, a guy that is an alumni, that was a captain there, that it means everything to in Coach Key. So I love the way they've looked, and it feels like it's been a long time coming. Like they've been, extremely tough, gritty team, but now they just have the players in the key positions that are older veterans ready to explode. And to this point, I'm going to knock on my wooden desk here, they've stayed healthy. Like that's a huge piece of this puzzle, especially when you ask all that you do from their quarterback and Haynes King. I mean, listen, when it's 3rd and short, goal line, whatever, out in the mid, everyone knows who's getting the ball. Every team, every player in the stands, commentators, and you can't stop it. There's nothing you can do. Haynes King's coming down the track. And so, I think it's one of those things where they're playing at a really nice level right now. And they've got a big test this weekend. We're traveling with them. We're just hitching our wagon to the Ramblin' Wreck there, because we're going to join them in Durham as they face a very gritty and much improved Duke team from week 4 on, who's playing great on defense. And to be honest, this game between these two is almost an elimination game from the ACC Championship. To me, it looks like at this point, the Miami Hurricanes, a gap, and then you've got Georgia Tech, Virginia, and Duke kind of battling. And I know SMU's undefeated and they're doing their thing, but it feels like those three are vying, for that spot, that second spot in Charlotte. And if you lose this one, man, you're probably down and out from that opportunity unless chaos ensues here. So this is some really impactful football that we're going to see this weekend in Durham.
You mentioned Virginia there, Eric, and the Cavaliers, I think one of the most surprising teams and turnaround from last year. They've got a schedule that looks perfectly winnable as well. Is a ACC Championship game appearance not just potential, but also likely or probable occurrence for the Cavaliers?
Yeah. I think the interesting thing about those three that I just mentioned, Duke is the only one that plays all of them, right? Like Duke plays both of those other guys. They play Clemson. They handle a lot, that is under their control and that they have, kind of lined up here. You look at just conference play the rest of the way for the Cavs. They go to North Carolina, which should be a walk in the park. I mean, those guys are playing really bad football. Cal, who's been turning, you're at Cal, so you're traveling across the country, has been turning the ball over a ton, has not looked quite as explosive as they had. A Wake Forest team that's getting better and better. Those guys are sneaky, and who knows what that's going to look like. And then at Duke, again, is that literally going to be the game that decides who's going to the ACC Championship? It very well could, there towards the back of November, and then they finish against Virginia Tech, their heated rival. That's always, again, a fascinating matchup because Virginia Tech has owned that rivalry. Even when Virginia has been marginally better, Virginia Tech finds a way. I think Virginia has one win in like the past 25 years against those guys. So it's a big deal, and that'll be a huge game. But outside of that, the to get to Wake Forest, Duke, and Virginia Tech, it does look like a bit of an easy walk in the park. And I love Chandler Morris. I think he and Haynes King, very similar guys in regards to what they want to do for their offense. And you look at Coach Key, Coach Elliott, who was my former offensive coordinator. I mean, he's baby Dabo, right? He learned everything he could, from Coach Swinney in the way of building a program, building a culture, getting the guys in place and the systems that he runs. So I'm pulling for him, man. It could be really fun to see him, get that victory.
I was really loath to put North Carolina on the running list because I think everyone's fed up talking about all the issues at North Carolina and not talking about the football. And I guess we should be really wary here, Eric, because if your phone goes, you might have to answer the call from Bill Belichick if you start talking about him. Are there any? I'm trying to be positive here. Are there any bright spots coming out of North Carolina? Because the reason we ask this question is it's remiss of us not to ask someone who's in the conference and gets to hear what's going on. Is there anything positive happening in North Carolina just now?
I guess the positive reinforcement that we've heard, which, I mean, I could care less about, to be honest, but we've heard everybody say we're committed, we're all in, we're pulling for this guy, I'm committed to care. I mean, I guess that's a positive, other than just everybody upping and quitting, is a benefit there. I do think that North Carolina has a relatively decent, little recruiting class that they've put together. But other than that, boys, it is it's a bit of a dumpster fire, at this point right now. The football has looked horrific. Everything off the field is even worse. The rumors, the allegations, the things of this nature, happening there. It's a total embarrassment, to be honest. But if you want to say give him time and see what he can build, sure. Or are you just digging a much deeper, worse hole that you have to eventually get out of? I'm not sure, which side of that coin, North Carolina is going to want to seriously play on.
Do you think they'll pull the ripcord on that experiment, for want of a better word, sooner rather than later, Eric?
I thought they would, but then all these things keep coming out. And like the chancellor was at the press conference today, which never happens. That's kind of weird, as like a vote of confidence. So I don't know if there's just so much money involved or if they legitimately just want to, play this out and see. Which, listen, at the end of the day, this is brand new for Bill Belichick. I do want to be relatively sensitive to this in regards to he is live figuring it out. And maybe everyone involved completely underestimated that difficult of a challenge and change. Maybe that's, the case that's happening here. And maybe everyone is admitting fault and saying, hey, we need to look at this from a different lens and then reevaluate. But I don't know, man. The off the field stuff has to stop. Like that we can't have all these distractions and silly things and just making our program look bad. That has to pause immediately.
Yeah, part of my cynical nature was wondering if the Chancellor was at Bill Belichick's press conference today to make sure there was no hiding of those off-season, off-the-field shenanigans. Keeping a close eye, keeping him on a close leash. But maybe not. Maybe it was the vote of confidence, which maybe that's worse because the vote of confidence is a dreaded thing, right? We touched on Matt Rule earlier, and we wanted to touch on Nebraska because as we talked about, Penn State is pretty much out of the picture now in the Big Ten, and there's a real chance that obviously there's Ohio State and Indiana and Oregon are still kicking around there as well. But for Nebraska, this is probably the best season the Cornhuskers have had and the best shot they've had of being up the top end of the Big Ten. Is it a team that could sneak maybe into playoff consideration for Matt Rule? And if they do, back to the original conversation, how big a lure is Penn State to leave what is currently a program in a dicey situation to leave a program like Nebraska for that situation at Penn State?
Yeah, it is. It is always a crazy thing. And sure, absolutely. I think Nebraska was one of my dark horses when we're talking about making a playoff run and, looking like they have the tools, going out and getting some nice receivers. Clearly your quarterback, the jump that we see year 1 to 2 as a starter there. And they've looked great so far, to date here. I know the Michigan loss, but a 3-point loss, to at the point of a top 25 team who was ranked 21. So yeah, why not? Why couldn't they? If they went out and do their thing, they've got ranked USC on the schedule and nobody else. So why not? When you look at the schedule, and who knows if they could and who they would play in the Big Ten championship there. But maybe that's even better if you're just on the fringe of that, not in, because you don't have another loss. And I know clearly if you win, you're in, but then they don't have another loss that could hurt them and potentially penalize them. Whereas that next team up would slide in right in their spot there. So, and then to go on the Penn State thing, I think the leverage that they have is that magic A word, that alumni, and having the relationship with the athletic director. And, just when home comes calling, it's hard not to listen, right? Like it's one of those things, even if you feel like it might be even situations, you add that cherry on top, and who knows financially what that would look like. I would imagine it would be pretty significant, for him to leave that and some, interesting things that, they might call. But yeah, I think that plays a really big key in it if and when, Matt Rule is called for that job.
I want to talk a little bit about Group of 5 football, Eric, because my first experience interacting with you was when you were calling Coastal Carolina Fun Belt, Sun Belt games on a Thursday night a few years ago before the ascent to being one of the best game callers in the nation.
Come on, my man.
The Group of 5 is obviously a hot topic. We've got lots of great teams. North Texas obviously fell to USF at the weekend, and it kind of puts a blemish on their record as you look at the path now to the college football playoff. Memphis, Navy, USF, Tulane. Who's you pick from those? Because there is a lot of good football, a lot of games to be played against each other down the stretch.
Yeah, I think right now the easiest, probably most common answer you're going to get is South Florida, and then Memphis right behind them. Just clearly having beaten, an SEC opponent in Arkansas and got the dominoes rolling there, and just the way that they play. They're fast, they're physical, they have some really fun players. But then same thing can be said for South Florida and beating. A Florida team beating a ranked Boise State team, which I think we kind of take a little bit out of that currently. But that does matter from a perception standpoint, and just the way that they play, and a North Texas team that I believe, you correct me if I'm wrong, was North Texas favored when that game started? Were they a 1-point favorite maybe? So
yeah, I think
that's important, that people are thinking you're going to upset and you win by 30 or close to 30. Like that's a big deal there. And you kind of look at the schedule, the fact that they face each other in a couple of weeks here at Memphis, and you're just like, okay, let's get it done. Winter's going. That's kind of one of those things, and that's probably even the more fun piece of this or aspect of it is they play each other, and it's one of those things where it's not different conferences far away and we're looking at, okay, which one's better, whose competition is better. No, we get a direct result. We get to directly see that. So I'm all in, man. I love it, and think that it's going to be a really intriguing race.
Let's finish off with Miami, because we didn't, when we went through our ACC roundup, we didn't really talk too much about them. It strikes me that there's something really interesting happening with Miami this year, because there's a lot of commentators outside of the conference who are just sitting waiting on Miami being Miami and tripping them up. But it doesn't feel like this is a team that's doing that what they've done in the past. How good is this Miami team, Eric? And could this Miami team win a national championship?
Yeah, I think, what was fascinating about a year ago when we were, talking about the selection show and we were talking about award winners and things of this nature. Nick Saban said that Miami's defense kept them out of a national championship game. He felt like they were a good enough offense that they could play for a national championship. And obviously we felt the same way with Cam Ward, eventually being the number one pick at the quarterback position there. But there were interesting things with Miami last year where they just flew too close to the sun, right? Like Cam Ward is a very unique talent, is a one-of-one talent that does things that only he can do. And there's some bad that comes with that. He's trying to extend plays too much, throws across his body to the middle of the field. It's a pick six. You put yourself in a really bad spot. And it just felt like if he did that enough, eventually there would be a moment that the team couldn't overcome, that the defense wouldn't be able to have his back, that they would not be able to make that happen. And we saw that a couple of times. We saw that twice with Georgia Tech and with Syracuse. This year in particularly, it feels like what they are doing is very sustainable. It feels like it is very complementary. It feels like it is a full, complete team. And funny enough, when I'm talking with my brother Aaron Murray, and we talk about Miami, they look like an NFL team in regards to how they play. Move the ball how you need to move it, run it or pass it, score, play good defense, and eat the clock. Like they just go about their business. They're not high flying trick play, multiple different crazy things. Nope. It's just line up, run the ball. Okay. You go to one safety, we're going to throw it. You go to two safeties, we're going to run it. And it's just very methodical the way that they play. I think Carson Beck is a huge piece of that, clearly. And it was so funny to me too, guys. Preseason, everybody was hitting me up saying, how is this going to work? He's not Cam Ward. He can't do what Cam Ward does. And I just kind of chuckled thinking, do you think Shannon Dawson is just looking around for the next Cam Ward? Because that guy doesn't exist. There's only one of them, and it's kind of disrespectful, honestly, to think that that's all he can operate with. They are very different players. Carson does a great job of, going through his offense, understanding his protections, where he's not protected, getting to his check down. And I think the receivers are funny enough, a little bit better this year in regards to the things that they can do from a lot of different look standpoint. And the offensive line, the run game, but most importantly, the defense has been really good. So George, absolutely. I think they're the best team in the country right now. And, I think they can win a national championship.
That's quite a statement to end the podcast on. 30 minutes just flies by when we're talking to Eric. It's a travesty. Eric, you talked about the work you're doing with the Georgia Bulldog legend Aaron Murray. For those listening to this podcast that are not familiar with the stuff that you do, what can we look forward to? You mentioned where you're going to the huddle, but talk about what's happening over the next week.
Yeah, I appreciate you, man. We've got loaded episodes. So since I've spoken to you guys, have another podcast, a new podcast, the Mac and Murray Show, that's over on YouTube, plays on SiriusXM, where we're much national. We're talking big games, huge ball. We have a couple of fun guests coming this week to preview a big weekend. And then, of course, with my girl KG, Gramlich and Mac Lain, ACC focused, hitting all the big games of the week there. And then the huddle every Saturday. You can check it on ESPN app, but also ACC Network. So it's always a pleasure to talk with y'all, man. Thank you for having me.
Not at all. It's awesome to have you back on. It won't be so long to the next time. That's all from us on this episode. Thanks to Eric and Ollie for their expertise and their brilliant input. Thanks to you for listening and continue to support us. Stay safe and well, and catch you all next time.